Off before we turn this on, right? All right. Well, welcome everyone here, and welcome to those that are out there, hopefully in internet land. And looks like I got a notification that we're on at least the church one there. So probably the rest of them do what? On YouTube. All right. So we're good. Well, had some technical issues, which is not abnormal. This particular issue was different than we've had before. So anyway, so welcome everyone. This is Saturday Night Live Recovery Ministry, and what that means is our what we're trying to be focused on is all of the issues that we have to deal with, or try to. We don't want to exclude anybody that has issues, whether it ranges from mental health issues to obsessive compulsive acting out issues, anger, which would be one of those obsessive compulsive, but anger would be definitely one of them. Drug addiction, absolutely. Alcohol issues, absolutely. We've had people here that were working on cutting, sex addiction, pornography, all kinds of different issues. It's for everybody. Some people, they don't know what their stuff is. In fact, they didn't even think they had any stuff until they were here a little while. They figured out they had way more stuff than they thought they did.
Even if you don't think you're addicted,
you're
addicted to something. That's right.
Yeah, and so we're not here to beat up on anybody. We accept everyone that's interested in recovery. If you're not interested in recovery, you're still welcome to come, as long as you're not disruptive of anybody else here. And and we've had people like that. They were here to see what's going on. In fact, we had a gentleman here earlier said that he was said he'd be back, but he couldn't stay tonight. So we're looking forward to that. So, but. We are, as far as what I've been told, we're the only recovery group in the state of Missouri that will allow people to come in that are presently intoxicated or high, acting out, involved in their stuff, because we'll let you come in as long as you don't encroach other people's boundaries, and you allow the meeting to go on. We're here for you, especially for you. We accept you, but we don't always accept your stuff, right? I don't like my stuff, and nobody else likes their stuff, and we're all working on our stuff because we're all fellow strugglers, if you don't mind that terminology. Is that okay? Is that okay terminology? Fellow strugglers. Because we are. And even if you don't know that you're a fellow struggler, yes, you is.
You are.
Oh, no, come on, say it like me. Yes, you is. No, you don't say. You got to use proper English. Okay. All right. So let's go with a couple of thoughts, questions, or quotes tonight. And I have several. We'll see what we're going to do, and then we're going to review the questions that we've been going over, because the part that I've been doing at the end of the meeting, we're working on relapse and relapse prevention. My question to you right now, while we're talking about relapse and relapse prevention, is how's that help? Is that helping anybody? Is that making a difference? Is it making you think? Is it causing you to make any changes? Hello? Yes? Is it causing you to make any changes?
It also makes me more aware about surroundings.
Okay, good deal. Excellent. That's good. And we're going to talk more about that, those type of issues. Hopefully tonight we get all the way through the 3 stages of addiction. Tonight, we've touched it a couple of nights, but seem to be running out of room. But maybe tonight I'm going to have a little more time and a little more room. So if I'll shut up right now, I will have, right? But I'm not going to, so I'm going to talk. So here we go. I like this quote. This is by Dr. Daniel Amen. He says, ask yourself every day. I'm going to repeat that. He said, ask yourself every day if my behavior fits with what I really want. What do you think about that? That's a really strategic question, okay? Because I've asked the question, what is it that you really, really want, right? And oftentimes, we're not even real clear what it is that we want. We've talked about that, right? Yes. But his question here is ask yourself every day, if my behavior fits with what I really want. And that's really important, because if you're not acting out what you say you want, then maybe you really don't want what you say you want. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I like it. Let's see, do we want to do that? Yeah, let's skip that one and go on down to the next one. I like this one. Dr. Wayne Dyer says this. He says, there are no justified resentments. Repeating, there are no justified resentments. Practice forgiveness. He goes on to say, it is best to forgive. Unforgiveness is toxic to your soul. So the question is it in your best interest to have forgiveness? Well, if you have unforgiveness, it's toxic to your soul. So I guess the real question is, how does that unforgiveness work out for you? How does that resentment work out for you? Just another one of those things to think about. All right, are you interested in a lengthy, it's a cluster of quotes by Einstein. You interested in that? Okay, all right. Well, I've had this on my paper for multiple weeks and never really got, I didn't feel like we were ready, but I thought maybe today would be a good day. Albert Einstein said, information is not knowledge, and knowledge is not wisdom. A little confusing. Shall I back up and say that again? He said, information is not knowledge, and knowledge is not wisdom. Hopefully I can clear up some of that for you. Let's see. All right. The only source of knowledge is experience. Okay? The only source of knowledge is experience. You need experience to gain wisdom. That makes sense, right? All right. And then, and I looked up wisdom out of the dictionary. It says wisdom is experience, knowledge, and good judgment. Okay, that's what wisdom is. All right. Let's continue. Einstein said knowledge is not power. I learned earlier in my life that knowledge was power, but Einstein says knowledge is not power. He goes on and says, power is imagination. Power is imagination. And he goes on to say, imagination is more important than knowledge. Now that's a big comment right there. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. So, visualizing something out of your imagination is a creative process, and that's a powerful process. And that's it was Proverbs. No, Proverbs. I can't. 22, 7:22. Whatsoever man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so what is it? 23:7. Well, I was semi-close, right? You know, a hand grenade would hit it. Did you get that? Hand grenade would hit it. And so, anyway, yes, thank you. And so,
So where do you store up your treasures?
all right. And so, anyway, imagination is very important, and that Einstein, being the smartest man in the world, valued imagination. In fact, some of the stories that I heard about Einstein was that he thought and went into his imagination to figure out the things that he was questioning, and then he came back to the blackboard to try to work up the math to substantiate his imagination or theory. What do you think about that? All right. Is it warm in here or am I just hot? Okay.
Turn down.
Air conditioning, please.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. All right, let's go to what we're going to be talking about is family and influence. That's our topic for tonight with step 4. Okay, step 4 is we made a searching and fearless inventory of ourselves. And so that's the right topic, right? Family influence. And so the question, and then what I'm going to be dealing with later is relapse and how to prevent relapse. This is part 4. So the question is, what causes relapse? Have you got any new comments about what causes relapse? You got any new comments on what causes relapse? Unforgiveness.
Anger does too.
Anger, yes. Good.
Daily life struggles.
Yes, life struggles. Maybe if you were so bold, you would want to say in our study, have you realized what may be cause of your potential relapse, or what you can identify as maybe what caused your one of your past relapses, if you had a relapse? Anybody want to comment? Do what? Depression?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes?
Needs to be accepted,
Good?
or need to feel accepted, because most of the times you find out you're accepted anyway,
Right?
but you don't feel like you're accepted.
Yes, that's true. Very true. Next question. Of course, these are questions we've talked about. What are the common triggers for relapse? Let's ask, what do you think are your common triggers, or what common triggers of relapse?
Physical pain.
Physical pain, yes. Yeah, how about emotional pain? Yes? All right. What does it mean if you relapse? Do you think it means anything if you relapse?
Gotta get up and go again, I mean, you gotta, just try and do better next time.
Exactly.
Don't go down the same path.
Yes, that's true.
Change your mindset.
What do you think it means if you relapse? Isn't that a good question?
Yeah.
Well, if could it mean possibly if you relapse that you allowed yourself to get overwhelmed? How about that?
Yep.
Exactly what it is.
All right. And if you have relapsed, maybe it means that you haven't been taking care of yourself, self-care properly or appropriately. What do you think about that? Because the fact of it is, according to the information that I've touched on and I will continue to touch on here about relapse or how to prevent relapse, is that the primary issue is that recovery is tough, it's hard, it's painful, and that it requires us to work really hard and deal with our pain, address our stuff, not hide from it, but deal with it, and continue to address what's going on in our life, and learn the things that we need to learn, right? If we continue to try to live our life in trying to get clean with only the information that of how we've lived when we were not clean, then we're kind of stuck in a information dead place. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
So it's about dealing with your stuff. Okay. All right. Why do people relapse when things are going good? Do what? Reward. Because we feel that we've earned a reward, a break today, as McDonald's likes to say. And sometimes we go to thinking, I've done so good that one won't hurt. Right?
Well, just drink beer instead of whiskey.
Drink beer instead of whiskey, yeah. Or well, I've done really well, one acting out, or I'm in a place nobody knows, so it won't make any difference. Has anybody ever used that? But the trouble is, right? Okay, let's go. Let's hit the last one. Will I always be in danger of relapsing? Yes. And the answer is, you are only as strong as your self-care. And if you let go of the self-care, then you're potentially susceptible, right? And so I don't know, I've told different stories about different ones that thought, well, they had this whipped, so I'll never do this again. And that's when I usually, if I can, I say, you need a strategy, okay? You need a plan for recovery, and eventually we're gonna get to the place where I talk about a self-care strategy. All right? Even a daily plan for self-care. Right? Because we're only as strong as we have prepared us. If we look at ourselves in the physical health, if we don't eat right, if we don't sleep, if we don't exercise, and by the way, those are all positive strategies if you put them in the positive way. If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't address these things, we'll get ran down physically, correct? And if we get ran down physically, that means you are susceptible to catch something, right? Right? And when we've gone through this COVID stuff, we talked about taking vitamins and trying to, zinc and D3 and vitamin C and other things to try to have our body equipped to be able to fight these things, okay? And so, but if you run down, you deplete your body, if you destroy your immune system, then you're open physically. And the same thing having to do with your mental, emotional, and physical addictions. That if we don't keep ourselves strong, then that means you're weak in those areas. And if you're weak, that means you are then what? Susceptible.
Yep.
All right? And
Anything.
to anything.
Not just
So-
disease, not just disease, but other things.
Right. So anyway, that's where we're at. Okay. Let's see. Let's stop right there, and we're going to go ahead and read the 12 steps. Willie can cover for you if you're not ready. It's up to you.
Yay! Ain't everybody?
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing this evening?
Good, how about you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, Heather.
Hey, Heather.
Again, our presenter of step 4 is not feeling well, so I'm going to fill in. How about that? So you can check me out. Hi, Renee. I want you to check me out, make sure that I'm doing okay. You're hiding behind the pole.
Okay.
Okay. All right. He selected the family influence, and this was out of Nehemiah 9:34 through 38. And step 4, I've already read step 4, but I want to go ahead and read it again. Step 4 is we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That is where we look at ourselves and we look at not only the good things, but also the things that aren't good. And we're not judging them. Step 4 is not judging ourselves or looking, evaluating them. Right now, we're just collecting. We're just taking inventory, like you would take an inventory at a store, okay? Or take inventory of your closet, okay? Or whatever you want, of your shoes, or whatever. You're just trying to get it all down so you know what you got, so that you can go, and actually when we go to step 5, then you're going to go back and look at your inventory. So we're just trying to get it recorded here, and trying to move from the land of denial into being hopefully a little more aware. Does that make sense? Because you can't fix something that you say is not there. I like Jeremiah 6:14 out of the Old Living Translation. It says, you can't heal a wound that you say that's not there. And so, even though I changed a few words there when I said you can't fix, but the fact of it is, you can't, if you're not aware of it, then you can't address it. Right? Okay. So, in our Life Recovery Bible, it said that our families of orientation has had an influence on who we are today. Would you agree with that? Our family of orientation, that means the people that raised us. Or maybe the people that were supposed to raise us. Okay? And even if we raised ourselves, then we're influenced by our own raising. Would you agree with that? All right? And so my mother told me I helped raise her. That's what she said. So that might tell you a little something right there. Yeah, I'm here, aren't I? Right? So some of us want to pretend that our family was and is nearly perfect. Well, growing up as a kid, I thought my family was okay because that's all I had to compare it with. Right? Yep. But the further I went, the more I recognized that it wasn't as good as I thought it was. There was others that were worse, though. But here in this study, it's talking about that we're influenced by our family that raised us, and others are maybe have done some things, are responsible for the actions that we're taking right now, and we blame them for it. We blame maybe our family or other people, and we need to recognize that that's where it's at. But whatever the case is, we need to realize that what happened then, what was going on then, we need to take responsibility that we need to be responsible for what we do now, even though we may have been affected by our family of orientation or maybe teachers or coaches or neighbors or whomever, okay? That they, not saying what happened was right or good or okay, but the fact of it is, we have to make a choice. We have to take personal responsibility to be willing to move on to have a better life. If we don't do that, if we stay stuck in that resentment that we talked about a while ago, if we stay stuck in resentment, then that anger is a form of denial, and you stay separated from what's going on really in your life. So you need to go ahead and deal with that. Out of Nehemiah 9:2, it says this. It says the exiles, the Jewish exiles, they came to the place where they knew they needed to confess their sins. That confession is so important, that we recognize that something's wrong, and that I have to take responsibility for it, and then I have to confess it. Say that I am wrong. Does that make sense? It goes on to say, and the sins of their ancestors. They recognize, well, let's go on down to the next scripture. And that is, in Nehemiah 35 through 37, he says that our ancestors refused to turn from their wickedness. So now, today, we are slaves in the land of plenty. That you gave our ancestors for their enjoyment. It goes on to say, and when we serve a conquering king at their pleasure, and we are in great misery. You know, again, we're talking about family influence, and our influence of our family for good or ill is there, all right? But as they recognize that they said our ancestors they had their own wickedness, and they turned from what they knew that they should do, and then they said that they felt like it put them in bondage, or put them in a place of bondage. So what we have to do is recognize in our life that if even though we're maybe a product of harsh family of orientation, or traumas that affected us early in age or even later in age, that we need to recognize that that happened, all right? And we need to deal with that. And that's what they started doing right there, was by confessing the sins for their ancestors. And basically, yes, they didn't follow what they knew. And in fact, these folks, they didn't even know the scriptures. But it really spoke to me that they desired to go and rebuild the wall and listen to the scriptures that they found, and they were open to them, and it made an effect. So when we recognize, we can't. The bottom line is, and when I inserted that Dr. Wayne Dyer's quote by saying there's no justified resentments, that we can't use that as a way of escaping or denying or refusing what's going on in our life. Because if we try to numb it out, escape, hide it, avoid it, justify it, then we're going to be susceptible to the consequences of it. Does that make sense? Am I making sense here? Okay. Let's go on with just a little bit more here. It says, it's all right to admit the truth about what brought us into bondage. This is what it has in the literature. This might very well involve the wrong committed by our parents, our family members. It's perfectly all right to express our anger and resentment over what has been done to us. okay? All right, we recognize what is, but we don't stay there, right? Hello, we recognize what is, but we don't stay there. But if we don't recognize it, then we can't deal with it. But just because we recognize it doesn't mean that we set up a tent and camp there either. Does that make sense? All right. Now, I feel like I'm belaboring this point a little bit. Hopefully it's coming across okay. Is it, I'm looking for a read here, okay? So far, I got one slight nod.
It's good.
Okay, it was from you. One slight nod. Okay, all right, let's go, let's continue here. Okay, we have the right to hold others accountable and grieve our negative effects, which their actions have had on our life. Okay, we have a right to do that, but that's the process which I've already talked about. You're recognizing, you're dealing with it, and you're and I'm not saying it's as simple as I'm saying it. It's a process. Have you ever heard me say it's a process? It's a process, but we have to be willing to address that process. And is it easy? No, it's hard. But you know what? It's not harder than living in the hell that you've been living in. Okay? And there is a light on the other side of that tunnel. It's scary and it's hard. But if you stay in that nihilistic place of suffering and pain and denial, then basically you go down that swirling drain into the abyss. And eventually you'll lose all hope. You know what I'm talking about? You'll lose all hope. And if you lose all hope, and it's not long after that. Okay? And I don't want you to lose hope. I want you to have hope. There is hope. There's a way out. But the way out is recognizing it and dealing with it. But yes, it's know the truth and the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
But in the process, it makes it hard. Okay? It gets hard as soon as you wake up and you start to deal with stuff, it feels harder. But when it's feeling harder here because you're waking up, that means you're making some healthy moves.
Yep, exactly, yeah.
All right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, let me give you a little quick illustration. A dentist is not out to hurt you, but if he finds a cavity, then he has to drill it out or pull it out, right? And yes, he may have to inflict you with some pain, but it's not to punish you, but it's to help you and to even heal you.
Yep.
So all healing has an arc of pain in it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All healing is painful. Shall I say that again? All healing is painful. And living in denial, living zoned out, living numbed up, that only, number one, postpones the pain, and number two, it also multiplies the pain. Would you agree with that? Okay, let's go forward. All right, it's not all right, however, to use this as an excuse for our own wrong choices and for staying in bondage. All right, I've already said that, right? Okay. Our relationships may be, our relatives may be partially responsible for bringing us to this point, but we are responsible for moving on to a better place for ourselves and for our families. You know, what we do right now affects everybody around us. Those family members that we have connection with, those family members that we don't have connection with, it affects them. If you know how it affects them in the negative, right? Well, if it affects in the negative, will it not affect in the positive?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the questions. Are there people in my family? Are there people in your family of origin who I have blamed for my life? My life situation, right?
Yep.
Is there? Okay. And maybe the results of my addiction. Well, there's a good possibility. We have enough, yes. You know, there are people that have influenced us. Okay? If so, who? Question asked. Okay? Number 2 says, what resentments do I carry towards them, even if unrelated to addiction? What resentments do I carry towards them? What's another word for resentments?
Bitterness,
Bitterness,
Despised.
despised,
hatred,
hatred, anger,
No doubt.
frustration.
Yep.
Okay? So, on the scale of positive and negative, all those things we said, where would those things run on the scale? In the positive and negative. On the positive side or in the negative side?
negative side.
Negative side. And if we are loading ourselves up with that negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative energy, I wonder how that affects us in our life function.
Leads us towards addiction.
Yeah. Gets you overwhelmed, right? And if you get overwhelmed, then your amygdala takes over, and that's when you very well could react and try to escape through an unhealthy coping mechanism. That's the reason why self-care is so important, and we'll talk some about that. Some of the things on self-care is dealing with those automatic negative thoughts. Have you ever heard of that, automatic negative thoughts? Some people call them ants. Have you ever heard them called that? Ants. Kill the ants, okay? The ants in your head, automatic negative thoughts. Ants in your head. Anybody, should I ask, is there anybody in here with ants in your head? Automatic negative thoughts. I have something that maybe in sometime soon I'll go through about how to address those automatic negative thoughts, those ants. Interested in that? Okay. So, and again, we're talking about what resentments do I carry? All right. Let's go to number 3, and then I'll shut up for a while. How about that? Sound like a deal? Like a good deal? What truly brought me into the bondage of addiction and dependency? What truly? What truly? An escape? Okay. You know, we were talking, do what? Hurt, yes. Yeah. We were talking about blaming, looking at our family, and primarily this lesson is about recognizing the issue of our family and how they've affected us. And, but the question here is what truly, even though we had all that happen, is that truly what brought us into our addiction and dependency
Mindset,
mindset.
mindset on pain, and, physical, mental, and emotional.
And everybody can maybe have a different answer, right? But you need to know and look at your answer. And that's the reason why these step questions are so important, to help you to address them. Now, you'd asked me for particularly what we're doing tonight, so going through them, you read them, you got them, but going through them tonight here in the group, did it make any, did it have any more impact?
Yes.
It did, okay. That's a good answer. Okay, so, all right. Any comments on what I've said so far, Willett? All right, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, okay.
We so appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're here. And Brandon's gonna come and do our step reflection right now. So, welcome Brandon. This is his first step reflection, so welcome Brandon.
How's everyone doing? All right, kind of, well, backed up to family influence, back to what he had just said. We made, kind of, step forward in what family influence is. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and step 4, influence. I think about influence. Let's define influence before we get started. It says the capacity to have an effect on the character, the development, or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. Which in influence, in my lifetime, my choices that I made along the pathway that brought me to this place of using, these drugs to escape, as we had talked about. Fears in my life. I could always revert. I was sitting there thinking about it. As far as influence, I could always go back to the first time that I used. What brought me to that place? What made me? I could blame it on my cousin. For his pressure on my life, and because I grew up with good parents. I can ever hardly remember drugs ever being around me or ever having a influence in my life. But I do remember what I could go back and I could blame my cousin for offering me that first hit. But I've got to realize that it all comes down to personal,
Personal choice and boundaries.
what am I going to allow in my life? What kind of, but we all know that why did I use? Why did I make that choice? What was that choice that I had in my life that I wanted to try? I wanted to be accepted. I wanted, to feel accepted, like you said, John. We all. I know me. I felt, that even though I had a good influence and upbringing, I still made, there's people, places, and things, that as, I thought about that, I've got to realize that, it all comes down to my responsibility for my recovery, even though I may not be responsible, possible, my influence that my cousin had on me. I mean, I could shift that responsibility on him, but I don't. Today, I don't have any resentments. I've got to realize that my bondage and my addiction was all, that experiment. We all like to experiment with that. But going back to the step 4 reflection, I've got family influence is definitely, I've got to realize that, just like, going back here, it says it's all right to admit the truth about what brought us into bondage. This might very well involve the wrongs committed by our parents and other family members. It's perfectly all right to express our anger and regret over what has been done to us. But I've got to realize that the truth is, I had a big time blame. I can't blame no one really but myself in that. And so, did you want me to read the scripture that deals with that, or?
Do anything you want.
Okay. So we'll go here, kind of over the scripture reading in Nehemiah chapter 9, 34 through 38. Let's look here. Okay, 34. Okay, says here, our kings, our leaders, priests, and ancestors did not obey your law or listen to the warnings in your commands and laws. Even while they had their own kingdoms, they did not serve you, though you showered your goodness on them. You gave them a large, fertile land, but they refused to turn from their wickedness. So now today we are slaves in the land of plenty that you gave our ancestors for their enjoyment. We are slaves here to their good land, to their good land. And so, man, that's definitely a mouthful there. I mean, even though, my ancestors didn't have the law, they still, like it said that they listened to the warnings in your commands and laws. And so I've got to go back to realize that the influence that I had growing up it's definitely had a, I could blame everything on, anyone and everyone, but I've got to realize that the blame's got to go right back to, I'm responsible for my actions. I've got to take responsibility for my actions.
Comes down to choices and mindset.
Right. So, with that, I think that has got it. Like I said, influence is a big one. It really is. I mean, we have to, realize influence has a big, big part of what we are and who we become. So, with that,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for doing that. And thanks for everybody for hanging in here. One thing that I wanted to say about influence, and actually you helped me think about it. Your statement, which I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier, but about influence is important. But you know what? Other than God, God's a big influence, right? God's a big influence, but who is the biggest influence in your life other than God? Could be a tricky question.
Yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Yourself. You listen to you and you believe you more than anybody else, even when you're wrong, right? And you can, and if you will even look at your wrongs and you go to that deepest part of yourself, that spirit part of yourself, that core self, and see if I'm right or I'm wrong, if it's true or if it's a lie or false. That is something that can really help you to clear things up, and I encourage you to do that. But you influence you, and one of the techniques on killing ants deal is that you one of the exercises, you don't mind if I hit this real quickly, do you? All right. One of the exercises is that you write down with your non-dominant hand, if I remember correctly, all the accusations that you're thinking about, and write them down. But you see, you're able to visualize. We're talking about visualization, but you visualize either that person or something saying that to you, and you write it down with your non-dominant hand, and then you see yourself, but not from inside, but from outside, like you're defending yourself, rebutting those statements, and as that visualization is speaking, you're writing it down with your dominant hand, and that process helps you to make a transition there. And also, it's also moving. It's bilateral activity. It's going from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, and so because you're using the right hand and the left hand. And anyway, I think it's a pretty powerful exercise because it's not. One of the other truths about it is that you put you're visualizing it on the outside of you instead of all in the inside of you. Usually when you're beating yourself up, it's you telling you on the inside of you. Isn't that true? And the trouble is, your brain believes everything that's going on there, even though it's not really believable. But then when you're able to create a little bit of a distance, and I know this is a little psychological gymnastics a little bit, and emotional gymnastics, but you put it outside there, and it kind of puts a little bit of distance, and it affects you in here. Does that make sense? All right. All right. Relapse and how to prevent relapse. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump down let's see if there's anything here I want to address. Let me hit the high points here, and that is that I'm gonna, where we kind of left off last time was on the 3 stages of relapse. There are 3 stages, and they work in succession, okay? And before we get to that, how do you prevent relapse? And there's 2 things that we need to do that will help prevent relapse. Are you interested in that? 2 things. The 2 things are having support therapy, having people that can help you to work with you, whether they're professional or non-professional, that they're able to work with you. That's number 1. And number 2 is social support therapy or help or peer groups, meetings, groups, things like that. Those are 2 things. And all the other methods are involved in that, and some of those methods are cognitive belief therapy, CBT, which is mean that you address some of those automatic negative thoughts that we're talking about. Also, allowing people to help you because, well, let's go ahead and finish that thought. Allowing people to help you overcome the fears and those negative thoughts and the triggers that are come by that, because it's easier to do it with somebody than on your own. Have you found that out to be so? So if you're getting the more professional or semi-professional support, and then you're getting peer group and group and meeting support, and they're helping you to process your fears, overcoming your fears, and dealing with your negative thoughts, you're not only learning, but you're also developing skill, and you're also having, you're addressing care, self-care, because you're making connection with people. And there are some people, as you'll find out, that are, well, let's take it from the negative. There are some people that are detrimental to your recovery. Hello? Right? There are some people that are detrimental to your recovery. And so what do we want to do about them?
Not associated with them.
Yeah.
Pray for them.
We need to have some healthy distance there, right?
Pray for them from a distance.
Now, I'm not saying we have to hate them or we have to be ugly to them, but we have to have some reasonably healthy distance if they negatively affect you, right? Hello? Love them from a distance. That's one way of doing it. And so then what we need to do is identify people that positively affect us in our recovery. Okay? I do better when I have these type of connections. I like something you said earlier. Is it all right if I mention to you? You said earlier, said I like or I love. I don't remember. I think you said, maybe you said I love being home, and being in the meeting and being connected and being in a healthier vein of living. Is that all right? Using that terminology, and so and see, okay, and that's all choices, right? Because we get to choose the healthier path or the unhealthy path, and so that's what we're talking about relapse prevention. So I liken recovery almost to like a minefield. What do you think about that? A minefield, there's mines out there, but you don't see them. Does that remind you of the recovery field out there, a life field? Because it's messy, it's hard, but you can get through a minefield if you're patient, you have the right tools, you have the right education, and you do it slowly because it's a process, right? Right? When I was in Nicaragua, particularly the first time, and maybe it was there the other times I've been there, but it was kind of a startle factor when I was there the first time. I remember one of the towns that I was in had a big old sign there, and it says, "Stop! Minefield area." Because in the war there, where the Contra and something, I don't, anyway, they mined some of the areas, and there for a long time there were kids that they'd just kick a soccer ball out into this field, and they'd run out to get it, and they blow them up or blow their leg off or something like that. And they didn't have enough money at that time to sweep the field, and this was up the river town, so it was kind of on the fringes of things. So, the government wasn't maybe all that interested at that time to deal with it. But anyway, it was a minefield, and that was one of the thoughts that came to me about recovery. It's a minefield. You can do it. It is possible. But you have to be educated. You have to take it slow. It is a process, okay? And you can make it.
That's a lot of patience.
Takes patience. Takes work. A lot of times we don't want to go slow. We just want to go fast. Get it over with, right?
Yeah.
But how's that worked out for you?
Rip that bandage right off.
How did that work out for you? Do what? Blowed up a few times. Okay, all right. I was wondering if you guys could relate with that analogy. All right, so we have mental relapse, we have physical relapse, we have emotional relapse, we have mental relapse, and we have physical relapse. Those are the three stages of relapse. And they are stages because you go from one into the other, and sometimes it can be really quick. But we're going to address it. I have a whole nother worksheet that I'd like to go over, and I'm not going to have time to go over that tonight. But sometime I would just like to go over this worksheet, and it addresses just the three stages. I think it'd be beneficial, but who knows? Maybe we'll do it next week, depending on how far we get tonight. All right. Now, some of this I've already gone over, but I'll try to go over what I've already gone over a little quickly, and that is emotional relapse, which is the first stage. And in emotional relapse, you might not even think about using or acting out, okay? But because of the lack of attention of self-care and or isolation, probably and isolation, not or, but isolation, and inconsistent attendance with your whether it's therapy or sponsor or and or group meetings, that sets you up for a relapse because you're not taking care of yourself. Like I talked about earlier, that makes you weak, and we're dealing with emotion, so that makes you emotionally weak. It pushes you around emotionally, makes you susceptible, right? Does that make sense? So if you start isolating, if you start stopping, how about that? If you start stopping, how about we just say, if you stop attending meetings, group meetings, counseling, self-care, then you might be in the middle of an emotional relapse. Mental relapse, stage 2. The stage is characterized by that tug of war. I mentioned that last week. This tug of war between what you want to do, far as you want to make a change in your life, and those desires that have been pushing you around with with your past habits. So this tug of war is going on, and then maybe you might romanticize. Anybody ever done that? Romanticize past drug use. What would that look like? Romanticizing past drug use. Well, saying how good it was, how much fun it was, how important it was, and yes, to some degree, in the very beginning, I'll agree with this. Maybe in the very beginning of this, you saw it as some benefit, but the benefit didn't last long. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yep.
Okay, so romanticizing is trying to exaggerate what had gone on and live in a fantasy. Would you agree with that? Okay, so hanging out with old friends, okay, lying, deception to yourself and to others. I'm getting more and more information about what lies do to us. Lies poison us. It weakens us. They've done research about lies, and that lies actually make you weaker, physically weaker, emotionally weaker. Okay? Lies, lying about your thoughts about relapse. They affect us. But when we start to realize that we're lying, it's a habit, right? And habits are hard to break. But you got to realize it to be able to turn it around. And in my own life, I found out that I had to catch a habit wherever I could, no matter where it was in the process. And maybe even totally after the fact. But wherever you catch it, and then you bring yourself back to where you need to be. Now, beating yourself up for the infraction isn't going to make you better. That only makes the infraction more permanent inside of you.
Yep.
You've heard this said, resist causes it to persist, all right? And so it stays with us. Now, what do you say? Well, then you say everything's okay? No, you recognize it's wrong, and then you begin to change it. You change your thoughts, you change your intentions, and you do your best to clean it up. You don't leave it undone. Okay? We don't bury a bomb out there and figure it'll never, no one will ever walk on it. You know what I mean? Yep. Hello? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay. Where am I at? I gotta hurry. Lying about our relapse thoughts. People, if you will be honest about what's going on, even though it's hard, it makes you feel vulnerable, but that's also strength. That's manifesting strength so that you can deal and that you can begin to turn those things in your life. Okay? These are all danger signs, okay? And we need coping skills to address these and to change these thoughts. And if we do that, these coping skills that we're talking about, it will help things not to escalate up. Because what happens when we lie or do things that we know we shouldn't? Well, we have to. If we stay stuck in that habit pattern, then that means we have to try to cover up. So the lie gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember my brother talking about, he's in the tree business. He said, if you'll cut down those little saplings, those little trees, when they're real little, then you won't have to call me in when they're real big. That, in other words, little problems are easier to deal with. Now, that doesn't mean they're easy to deal with, but they're not as hard to deal with as when they are 20 foot tall. Would you agree with that? All right. Number 3, mental addiction. Okay, mental relapse. All right. Let's go ahead and, let's go on down to physical relapse. Is there anything in there I need to do? I need to go ahead and hit. Mental addiction relapse is a result, according to the information here, is a result of prolonged isolation and limited self-care. That pretty much puts it in one little bitty definition there. Prolonged isolation, right? Because I can do it by myself type of mentality, okay? Even if it's just Jesus and me, that's still you're by yourself. Because probably you're really not even letting Jesus be a part of it. If you're not letting other instruments that he has out there to help be a part of it, because you're cutting him out even in that way. Does that make sense? In this stage, your mind is tormented between trying to stay sober and wanting to act out or use again. Correct? This is the mental. Okay? The emotional relapse may have caused a person to become depressed or irritable. Okay? And all these things stack on top of the emotional. Okay? In other words, all the mental stack right on top of all the emotional. Okay? All right, if you're feeling this tug of war, if you're having these old habits come back into your life, if you're having the old habits come back in your life, did I mention if you're having the old habits come back in your life? Did I mention that? All right, just checking. If you're having old habits come back in your life, or maybe even the old thoughts, okay? That wasn't on there, but we'll do that. Your desires start to change. Maybe you're romanticizing drug use or acting out behaviors, okay? Hanging out with old friends, lying to yourself, lying to others, deceiving yourself, deceiving others, lying about your relapse or your thoughts of relapse. Then you might be in a mental relapse. If you're doing some of those, one of those, you might be in a relapse, a mental relapse. Okay, the big one here, physical relapse. Once a person begins drinking, taking drugs, acting out, it's, according to the information here, it's hard to stop the process. When it's rolling, it's hard. Isn't that true? Okay? But if that person does not take the time to acknowledge or address their symptoms in the emotional and then in the mental relapses, that sets them up for the physical relapse. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right? So it's kind of coming in waves. You have the early strike of the emotional, then you have the strike of the mental, and then you have the acting out, the physical. Does that make sense? So we need to address all the other warning signs and issues. And if we don't, then because we're starting down the path of physical relapse. This includes drinking, using drugs, acting out, and the key here to prevent this relapse or to stop that relapse is to reach out for help. Reach out for help as soon as you can. Now, it's hard. We don't want to do that. Okay? I remember I was thinking about a guy last week that he had been clean 10 years from meth, and he shot up, and it was hard, but he stopped right there, and he let me know like the next day, and it turned around, and he's been clean ever since, and that's been, I don't know, that may be 10 years ago, or maybe more, I don't know. But it's hard, but it's not impossible, right? Would you agree with me? Agree with me? Okay. I remember one time that someone called me and said, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to die. Wanting to try to. Now, we really shouldn't get to that place, but at least at that place, we knew it was time to turn around because we're going to die. The key is to reach out for someone, get some help, to help mitigate that physical relapse as soon as possible, to help stop that vicious downward cycle, because it will pick you up and slam you down. Isn't that the truth? Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, pornography, cutting, because it wants to grab a hold of you. And then it tells you got to hide it, right? And when you hide it, it works on you. Am I telling you the truth? It works on you, all right? And it makes you weaker because you're lying, right? You know how it is. It's hard, but it's healthy to take those healthy steps of recovery. Okay, if physical relapse, you are acting with the intention, all right? They're trying to help redefine again, give us a definition of physical relapse. You are acting with the intention of using substances again, or acting out, or an acting out behavior. In other words, you're making choices. You're looking for it. You're calling people. You're seeking help, right? Those are, even though you haven't used, you're right on the verge of a physical relapse. If not already relapsed, and you just hadn't found your coping mechanism, or your drug of choice, or your behavior of choice. So because of the intention, you are in the midst of that physical relapse. You still have time to turn it around. You can. Is it easy? No. But you know what? People that have turned it around at that point, that was a big victory in their life. And because they had that big victory in their life, they had more self-confidence about themselves and for themselves. Does that make sense? All right, so a lot of people, they are concerned about, well, if I tell everybody I have a relapse, then that means I've fallen and I have to start all over, right? And I like this analogy I heard some weeks back about, they likened a relapse to climbing a mountain, where you have those safety gear, those pins that you drive in to the mountain to catch you, to to tie into. And they said, you know, if you have those safety pins in, yes, you may fall, but you're not gonna fall all the way down. You just fall down to your safety device, or just past your safety device, depends on how you got yourself fixed up. But the fact of it is, it's not good to fall. It's not good to fall on a mountain. But if you're operating with systems to help you, even if you do fall, it keeps you from falling all the way down. Does that make sense? I like that analogy. That safety rigging. Okay, so the big question is, if you find yourself drinking, taking drugs, acting out, and you're in the middle of you might be in the middle of a physical relapse. And if you are, what do we need to do? Call somebody. Call Doug, call somebody. And even if let me say this, even if the person you call don't answer or not able to respond, you've made a big step by making the call. You've started a different momentum, okay? A shift by making the shift, by wanting to call, right? So anyway, those are my thoughts. Any comment from anybody in the last couple of minutes? Thoughts? May the Lord bless you, keep you, may His face shine upon you, and give you His peace. And of course, make healthy choices, all right? See you next week. Thanks, everybody.